Micah 6'8" hike, take 5. So, Wednesday, the 20th of May, we met at Greg's house. I picked him up, drove out to the Appalachian Mountains to the Natahala Outdoor Center. Got a shuttle with a fella, and he drove us about an hour and a half to a place called Dix Creek Gap. So 75 miles and 5 days worth of hiking is easily driven in an hour and a half. We've determined. But so started out the day. Greg and I, we both had all of our gear packed out, just about equally loaded out for weight, and took off. Made about a dozen steps down the trail.
Micah 6'8" hike started with prayer. We
Very
gathered at the rock that has Dix Gap printed on there, and we had prayer together. We took some pictures, and about 1:35 we took off. About 1:45 I heard Dale breathing heavy, and I thought that he was going to be on the struggle bus that day.
Dale was definitely not very used to the hills. I'd made a few practice hikes, some 6 miles, some 8 miles. I did a 12-mile fully loaded run with very little breaks on a flat. Did it in record time, about 6 hours. Now it's 4 hours. So I was doing a good 3-mile-an-hour clip on the flat. Got in the mountains, and the trail is a deceiving mistress. I think that's the term we called it. I was not prepared for that. So yeah. I was struggling pretty hard on the first day. I was taking these little teeny tiny baby steps that Greg had taught me. He told me that I didn't really listen at the time. To stretch them out and stretch the stride out. And what that did was my little tiny steps were using my quads, which were strong muscles, but they got winded, and they started cramping up on me. Greg told me to stretch it out, and it helps use your glutes, your buttocks muscles, and so I
stretch it out, lean forward, and pull with those sticks.
And pull with the sticks, man. Hiking sticks, holy cow! If anybody watching this, if you've ever not hiked with hiking sticks, man, it's time to get some. Those things they're a godsend. So great tool for hiking. So day one, yeah, our original plan was to hike 4.5 miles into a little shelter on the trail, and Greg and I had talked a lot. We knew we had some big days, or a very big day coming up, a big 18-mile day, and we started out the trip, and we both agreed that pressing through a 5-mile day for another 4 and some change miles would help reduce a really hard day in the future. So we actually went through to what, 9 point?
Right at 9.
Yeah, 9 miles. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so just at 9 miles, 8.9, 9 miles to so we added 4 miles or so to a day that was originally scheduled for 5, so that we could reduce that time later on.
And that was the day that had already started at 5:38 when he texted me and said, "I'm here."
I'm here. Yeah, I was excited. I wanted to get here.
So we covered a lot of miles that day. That was our biggest travel day, but one of our smaller travel days on foot.
On foot, yep. And so we stayed at the North Carolina-Georgia line that night. So as Dale was struggling up the hill, Greg was nice, and he stopped a lot for me. And then after a while, he did this a lot for the whole trip. And that's not a problem. It's a good thing. I've spent a lot of time on the trail by myself. Not by myself. Me and God been out there hanging out, and he's been telling me, "Hey, one more step, buddy. One more step. You got this. You got this." And he helped me out a lot. So the first night we stayed at this little spring just over the North Carolina-Georgia line. So we started in Georgia. We walked all the way from Georgia just over the line. Well, it wasn't too
9
far.
miles.
It's 9 miles.
Walk.
That's big walk. But we stayed in North Carolina for our first night. Beautiful little spring. I'd never seen a spring like that. It had a little pipe where the water runs out and it drips down. Greg apparently has seen these before. I never have. And honestly, I think next time I come on the trail, I'm gonna pack a PVC pipe so I can, if there's some water coming out of the side of the mountain, man, I'll bring a pipe, because it's really nice to have that, just put your bag or whatever underneath your cup and be able to grab water. So met some folks on the trail, some college kids, college students, and there was Josh.
Josh was from Georgia Southern.
Georgia Southern.
Joel was.
Joel,
He
yep.
had moved here from Aspen.
Yep.
He was about 27 or so, and thinking that he needed to get on with his life.
Yep.
And so he got on with his life by walking for a month, I reckon.
Yep.
And then there was some other guy from Georgia Southern. I don't remember his name. But then there was Audrey, who is a thru hiker from Pittsburgh, who was already just eaten up with poison ivy after about 6 days on the trail.
Yep. And she had started from Springer Mountain, so she was doing a pretty slow clip, but she's out there. She's, you know, doing what she can. So we passed her, you know, and never really saw her anymore from that. So but that's not a big deal. So that North Carolina Georgia campsite. Dale was struggling. I did get there. I was hurting a little bit. You know, day one was hurting a fair amount. My legs had been cramping because I made those real short steps and not using the long steps. And but we were all set up for camp, and got dark. And
now remember what you prayed that night.
What I prayed that night.
Yeah, that night we got in the tent and we shared a little bit of devotions and we prayed. And I remember you saying, you know, God, this is so hard, but I'm in. I'm going to do it. I'm committed to doing this.
There's no doubt about it. So yeah, so I was in, and I wasn't going to let Greg make fun of me, call me a little girly man or anything like that. That night at the Georgia North Carolina border, the clouds rolled in, and we're at altitude, right? So the clouds just absolutely engulfed the whole campsite. It was fog. It's not fog. It's clouds. We were in the clouds, and there were these fireflies that were out in the woods, and there were thousands of these things, and the way the clouds kind of just made the light reflect. They were like these little glow balls, and they were just. It was amazing. It's almost. It's kind of like, not exactly, but it reminds me of the movie Avatar. Little things flying around. Have you ever seen Avatar?
Been a long
Anyway,
time.
yeah. So there's this tree of life and these little things floating around. It was unbelievable. Didn't get a video of it, and and thought to myself, man, I hope we get another night like this. We never have. So it's just it's a verbal representation, and there's only probably a handful of people on the planet that's seen it, but it's awesome. It was amazing. So we got up the next morning.
Well, you got up the next morning. I stayed in bed because
it was
wet.
It was
rainy.
100% humidity. We're in the clouds.
And I had left my hammock up all night, and it was soaked.
Yeah.
It was perfectly clear when we went to bed.
Yeah. The clouds hadn't rolled in until dark, and that's when I saw the fireflies. But yeah. So everything on the outside of the tents were pretty. We'll just call it 100% humidity. And so yeah, I got up early. It actually right around sunrise it started to sort of rain. It hadn't been raining yet. It's just a lot of condensation on the leaves and wind kind of blowing and knocking stuff down. And then it really did start precipitating in the morning. But I got up, packed up the hammock, Greg's hammock, and put it over next to his tent. And I was ready to go. And Greg was still in the tent. And what ended up happening, and this is actually really a good thing. And I don't know why he felt led, but Greg, I wanted to, but I didn't want to say anything. I didn't want to offend Greg and say, hey, I want to leave soon. But Greg said, hey Dale, why don't you get on the trail now? I'm gonna finish packing up and I'll meet you. So that was the beginning of day 2. I struggled on day 1, and I was able to move. It hurt a little bit, but I was able to go. And so what I'd learned on the day 1 is stretch out that stride. And what I thought was going to be an hour of hiking by myself before Greg caught me ended up turning into 2.5 hours. So
I thought it would be a lot sooner that I would catch you. I left about 35 minutes
Yeah.
after you did.
I had some wind beneath my wings.
And that was when I called Beth and said, Beth, I don't think Dale's going to make it.
On the way to catching me?
Yeah,
Yeah.
before I left, before I really
before
got
you
out of
left.
camp, I said, Beth, I just don't think Dale's going to make it.
Yeah.
And when it took me 2.5 hours to catch up with you, I was feeling a lot better about things at that point.
And I'd called my had I called my wife at that point? No, this is the second night that I called my wife that I had good signal. And I told her that this is without a doubt the most difficult thing I have ever done in my life. And I've been through Marine Corps boot camp, and that's tough. But this is mentally and physically, in my opinion, much tougher, at least at my age.
And that was a 15.4 mile day.
Yeah.
Because we added to that day. That day was supposed to be 12.2. And we decided to go ahead and add a few miles to that day because we had an 18-mile day scheduled for Saturday. So Thursday we did 15.4.
Yep. So big 15.4 day to our second night.
Right, Carter Gap Shelter.
Carter Gap Shelter had a little watering hole that was down a hill, 50 yards, well, actually the watering hole down the hill wasn't too bad, but getting back up to camp for the Dale was nearly impossible. My legs were so messed up. I could not lift my left leg more than about 4 inches off the ground, with pain or without it. It just wouldn't lift more than 4 inches off the ground. And so imagine trying to walk and lift your leg and throwing it forward. So when we got there, I was really hurting. We prayed. Greg and I, every night we have a devotion, and I prayed for healing. And Greg prayed for healing for me as well. And whatever it is, whether it's your body, the body that God made, and its resiliency, or if it was the hand of God that let me proceed, was just absolutely unbelievable. The next morning, I was able
that evening though, part of the Leatherman legend began.
The Leatherman legend, yeah.
And that is Dale's. That's Dale's trail name. Mine's Krispy Kreme.
Yep, Dale's is
and
Leatherman.
Dale's is Leatherman.
Yep.
And that night, after cooking dinner, I was burning out the little bit of fuel that was left in my stove, and then I decided that I was going to go over to my hammock since it was strung up. And I took one step, and I heard the most sickening crunching sound of this wonderful little alcohol stove that I had built out of a Coca-Cola Zero cherry Coca-Cola Zero can, and it was just sickening. Fortunately, because Dale plans ahead, he had 2 alcohol stoves with him that he'd made out of cat food cans.
Yeah.
And so that was good enough that he was going to share one with me. And so that was the evening before I felt really stupid. But we made it through that night, and the next day we're up, and this is where the Leatherman legend will later kick in. But the next day we did a 15.9 mile hike that took us to the road to Franklin.
That was the 64, old US 64 Wallace Gap.
No,
Winding Stair Gap.
Yeah, Winding Stair Gap.
Yeah, Winding Stair Gap. Winding Stair Gap. That's where we crossed the road. We're trying to find where the trail. So it came out at one point and went back across the road an eighth of a mile down or so.
Yeah, you had to go look for the white blaze.
So we looked for the white blaze, and so we were looking for a place to camp right there. Some great water. There was a little spring coming out of the side of the mountain near on the one side of the road, and then Greg went and scouted out a little campsite that was near probably about the most perfect waterfall that I think I've ever seen. It was absolutely beautiful. It made all this noise. It was the perfect white noise for sleeping next to, and we slept 20 yards from this waterfall that was flowing a heck of a lot of water, and we had a great night there. So on the trip across the road from where the AT came out into the opening to cross the road, and as I was walking, I saw this Ice House 40-ounce beer can, and I, just Dale thinking to himself, dang, Greg's kind of stupid. And he sort of crushed his stove. Let's see if I can figure this out. So I spotted the can. I left it on the road that night or that day, and we went and spent the night. And as Greg forgot about the sun being our alarm clock, the next day I got up early or with the sun and walked up the road just a little bit successfully. I add, I didn't have any problem with my legs working, and grabbed that beer can and and proceeded to pull out the assortment of tools that I have, including my Leatherman super tool, and built prototype number 1 of the replacement stove for Greg out of that beer can. So it ended up that stove absolutely did not work. It was a total failure. But Greg did point out some of his recollection of the design of the previous stove, so I was able to make some modifications to it and turn that stove into a successful and what I think is almost probably one of the most efficient stoves that we have between the two of us now.
It is.
It's hot and it burns very very little fuel. It's great stuff. So I built that stove for him and sealed my trail name 100% with Leatherman. So so that began day number 4. Is that night 3?
Yeah, that was our third night.
That was our third night. So that began day 4.
Which would have been a brutal day with the hills that we had to climb that day. And we had 18.3 miles scheduled.
18.3 scheduled, and there was a climb in that 18.3 that was 700 feet in elevation, over a third of a mile.
It was incredible, yeah.
It was about a 45. Literally, it's a 45-degree climb. The trail was right there, right in your face. Boulders. Lots of steps, and just as soon as you turn a corner after rocking up some boulders, there were more steps, and then you get done with the steps and you turn a corner and there was more boulders. It was a scramble to the top. I would not want to go down that. Going down is so dangerous. You'd have to turn around and just kind of slide around on your butt. Anyway, the reward at the top of that huge climb was a fire tower. That's where we had lunch. So we made it to the top of that tower around lunchtime. Had a phenomenal lunch.
Strung up my hammock.
Greg got the reward of the lifetime with his hammock, and we stayed up there for a fair amount of time, and then proceeded on down the trail. And we had a lot more work walking to do. We still a decent sized day, and that's where we ended up at.
We ended up at Wallabald, and that's
Wallabald,
where Daniel and Paul.
That's right.
Daniel and Paul Forehand from my church were scheduled to meet me and hike with us, and they got there at the Bald and decided to go southbound to try to find us. And fortunately, we were moving quickly, so they didn't go very far. About a half mile, it was downhill, and it took Paul at least an hour to get back up the hill. And so we knew that it wasn't going to work out for him to be able to travel along with us. But we got to our site that night. We found a camping area, and Paul and Daniel joined us. And that night we met some neat folks from Georgia, a couple of guys we were around for the past couple of days. We met Gypsy, and she's from Florida, and a handful of other folks. And,
had some math lessons and things like that,
yeah.
but we won't go into that. That's just a reference that we will keep to ourselves. But yeah, that was a good night at that shelter. Paul and Daniel were an absolute pleasure. They were gonna hike up the hill and spend one more night, so they just didn't drive 5.5 hours to spend one night and go home. So they were gonna as far as we know, they were gonna spend a second night and just enjoy it was absolutely beautiful up there. It was wonderful.
And that was an 11-mile day.
Yeah.
That was supposed to be an 18-mile day.
Supposed to be 18, but we did those big days previous.
Yeah.
And made that shorter day. So.
And fortunately, there was a Bible at this shelter. I thought my Bible was downloaded on my phone, and every other book in my Kindle library is, except for my Bible. And that night we sat around the campfire, and a number of people joined us, and we were able to discuss some different passages and share some thoughts and some prayer requests, and had a real good time. with folks that night.
Yeah, prayed for some healing and you know, some strength.
And what I really
Yeah.
thought was cool that night was when I was asking for prayer concerns, was when Daniel said, "Well, let's pray for what you're hiking for about human trafficking and
Yeah, oh,
raising
yeah,
awareness for
yeah.
that." And that was the cool part for me, for the 12-year-old kid to kind of center us back in on that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's good stuff. And so yeah, and all along the way we've had conversations, and just really we've tried to keep the focus, in our thoughts and our discussions. There's been secular talk, but hey, we're out here for a reason, and God has done a number of things for us. Given us the opportunity to do this, built this landscape with his own hands, with a sweep of his hands, and said, hey, this is the beauty that you get to walk through. So it's just phenomenal. Love it, absolutely love it. So left out from the shelter.
First one's out.
The first one's out, yeah.
So you can't say I was a sleepyhead every morning.
we got out.
And we
got
had
out
prayer.
early.
Had prayer with Daniel and Paul and the other two guys before we took off.
Yep.
And with Gypsy.
Yep. And just blew it out. So this day was a
10.6.
10.6, not quite 11. And so from that shelter, we ended up at the at the Natahala Outdoor Center, the NOC. So this was really nice. There was a huge fanfare.
Well, we've got to talk about Sunday.
Oh, I missed Sunday.
Yeah, you missed Sunday because we left from the Wawa shelter, and we hiked up to the next tower.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, the next tower. That was a pretty.
That was a fast hike that day.
It was a fast hike. That last mile and a quarter was pretty tough. It was a pretty tough climb. But I think I'd rather do that climb than coming at it from the other direction.
Yeah, and we got up there 12:30, strung up the hammock, which is not going with me through the Smokies, by the way. The hammock is not going to make the Smoky section. That's going to be weight that's going to meet me back in Hot Springs.
Yep. Yeah.
But we blew that section out, and the fire tower there, unlike the first one, you could go up to the platform, and this was an absolute panoramic view. And tell them about the gentleman with the map.
Oh, yeah. So we're up there, and you can see 360 degrees from this tower. It's just a platform. It's not a house or anything. So there's no walls. And there was a gentleman with a group of kids, teenagers, clearly, maybe college kids, and he had a map that was oriented to how all the views were. So you look that way on the map, you see this. You look that way, you see Fontana Dam and all the Fontana lakes, and go back this way, you can see that. And so he was pointing all that out, and one of the people had an orange.
And before with the orange, when she had walked up, she didn't want to go up the tower yet. She was like, "Oh, do we have to go up right now?" And she saw the hammock and made a comment, and I said, "Yeah, you get 15 minutes in the hammock for $10, and they'll give you a massage." And
I didn't know about the massage thing.
I threw that in. I didn't want to rub anybody's feet.
Yeah.
And so they went on up, and we got up there and made another comment about the hammock. She asked about the hammock, and I made a comment that I traded for an orange.
Yeah, because we weren't in the hammock, so she could make it down there. We'd charge her an orange for it or something. And the conversation headed towards these oranges that a few of the people had.
And I was subtly begging.
Yeah, he was not.
It was subtle. It was very subtle. They had to ask twice if we wanted an orange.
He was blatantly anyway. So
Did you like the orange?
I loved the orange.
You're welcome.
So yes, so Greg's subtle begging resulted in the arc of two oranges flying our way. So Greg actually had his peeled much sooner than I did. My legs were still a little bit wobbly from the climb,
and I don't peel mine with my feet.
Whatever. So Greg got a bite of his, but man, once that orange hit our mouth, they apparently the group the guy, he put the oranges in the freezer the night before, so that through the day they were thawing, and so they were still cold, and those oranges were without a doubt the best food item that we've had on the trip so far. I really think so. It was this burst of just sunshine, sugar, flavor and coolness that it's really hard to describe. So super time there at the tower. Spent some time there, had our lunch, and then we hiked the 1.4 or 0.8 miles back down to it was 1.4 up and then 0.8 back down, so 0.8 miles back down to the campground to a hobo campground. So we were maybe the second people
and we got trail magic.
And there was trail magic, yeah. There were people who had left some granola bars. Greg put up a hammock at that place as well. A really good set of trees. It was kind of on a hill. I figured out that you could enter the hammock from the uphill side and not struggle, and I guess Greg tried to get in from the downhill side and struggle a little bit.
There was no struggle. No struggle.
I mean,
no struggle.
Okay.
Yeah, but we were going to stay in the shelter that night.
Yeah.
We were there because there was no level spot on the camping sites.
Nothing. Yeah.
And so we decided to stay in the shelter, and I stretched out, took a little nap, which I awoke with a start and jumped up screaming because a bird flew right over my head, and I thought it was a mouse running by me.
Yeah.
But the mice did show up very shortly after that. Even though Dale destroyed their little nest of the cute little field mice, the mice began to scurry around as we were there. And after a while, I decided that I was just not interested in sleeping. So we went and found some sites that were okay, next to where everybody strung up their bear bags.
Yeah. Trying to get our bear badge.
Yeah, and decided to camp there. But we did cook in the shelter. But by the time the evening was over, it was like a hobo camp. People had taken every spot that you could possibly pitch a tent, and it was just filled up. Memorial Day weekend, Sunday night, near
a popular spot.
Tourist destination. But that night we decided to go back up and film the sun coming down, which was again 0.8 tenths of a mile. We filled up with water. Dale made me carry everything, and
he slack packed it. Don't feel bad.
I carried my water and his pudding.
And my pudding.
And his pudding.
We had chocolate pudding, and I offered chocolate pudding to Greg, but his tumbly had a little bit of rumbly in it.
It was the chocolate pudding was already being produced, and we were out of mountain money. That's the bad thing. But we went on top of the tower and met this great couple on their 3rd anniversary from St. Augustine, Florida.
St. Augustine, Florida. Yep.
And visited with them, and they gave us some mountain money.
Mm-hmm. The wipes.
They gave us some wipes.
Squishy wipes,
and I continued to beg of other hikers if they had any. And by the time the night was over, I had a surplus, and I ended up sitting.
Greg would be able to feed 5,000 with the mountain money. So yeah.
But it turned out it was mostly gas that was going on in my life because of all the crappy food, and of course my gas still has not matched Dale's. And the Bible verse that just speaks most clearly to me of Dale is, "Let everything that has breath praise the Lord." And he does it from both ends better than anyone I have ever heard.
Yeah, Dale he has an undocumented problem. But,
it may not be documented, but it's well known.
It's fairly well understood.
And then this couple had talked with us about how treacherous and horrible the hike up from the NOC was. And it was their first time on the trail. They weren't prepared. They didn't have trekking poles or the right kind of shoes. They had too much weight. And so they kind of, it kind of worked on me psychologically with the fear of what the hike down into the NOC was going to be, because our feet had already started to blister on day 3.
Yeah.
And I know I've got 2 toenails that are gone. I haven't popped a blister yet. Dale's got some nasty looking stuff. And but I was just kind of psyched out a little bit about what the hike down the 5.8 miles into the North was going to be.
Yeah. And that hike was. There was a couple of spots that were pretty treacherous. There was an overlook just before probably the first real treacherous downhill. Beautiful view. So you get this great view, and then all of a sudden you gotta shift gears to, okay, let's not fall and bust like our life. Coming down the mountain from the fire tower and the Waiea Bald shelter. Or no, Westerbald. Headed back down to the NOC. So thought that was going to be, the absolute worst downhill. It turned out that Greg's imagination.
Well, it looked bad on the map.
It did look bad on the map, but yeah. So
I'll show you how bad it looked, because this is how bad it looks
that the one?
No.
This one?
Yeah, right there,
Yeah.
right there. You got
Yeah.
it right there.
So
It looks like a V.
So this downhill right there from here to here, pretty big downhill. So it's a 2,500 foot elevation drop across. No, actually we were Western Bald Shelter. 2,200 foot drop across 131 to 137, 6 miles. So 6 mile trek, pretty much all downhill. So 6 miles with 2,200 feet of drop. It's what is that? 622.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, the math is every 3 feet this way you go 1 foot down.
Yeah.
That's pretty pretty extreme.
Mhm.
So but yeah, we did that for pretty much all day until we rolled into the Natahala Outdoor Center, the NOC. That's when we got the first opportunity to return to civilization. We got a chance to wash some clothes, take a shower, made our way into the local a town not too far away, and ate at the filling station. We ate at the filling station, and I can say that I highly recommend in
Filling station salad.
yeah,
It's about 8 pounds worth of salad.
about 8 pounds worth of salad. Really good. All of their stuff is good. Matter of fact, here in just a little while after we finish this vlog, we're gonna retry the second order that we put in. We actually had some healthy sub wraps created just for us on the trail, and we carried those up here to the campsite that we're at now. So this campsite, so we spent about 4 hours, 5 hours, relaxing, getting clean, doing a little reflection, resupplying, restocking. Dale lightened his pack, Greg heavied his pack. From here, this campsite that we're in now, we're the only ones out here. It's a great opportunity. There's still much fellowship left to finish this night out, because in the morning when we step off, Greg steps north and I step south back to the NOC, and Greg's going to continue on the Micah 6-8 hike into the Fontana Dam area over the next couple of days, and into the Smokies and beyond. So what else you want to
Well, it's
talk
been a
about,
good
yeah.
time of fellowship. We've talked about the Lord a lot. We've had prayer and devotions, and got to meet some really great folks along the way. Some real interesting characters are out here as well.
Yeah,
but
some of them have gas.
Yeah, but tonight is really it's our first night that we're just by ourselves. A remote campsite about just 2.5 miles outside of Nanahala, but it's definitely back into the wilderness. And tomorrow I've got a 13.6 mile day that I'm going to try to lengthen on out to about 19.1, so that I can have a very short day before my 0 day on Thursday. But looking forward to meeting the Chief and Ricky in Fontana. But it's been awesome to have Dale. He's been a great hiking buddy, and he has been a champion and has gotten stronger absolutely every single day. We give God the glory and the praise for that.
It's God that's done it. It's not Dale, and and Greg's been there, and he's never left me alone. He's hiked in front of me, but never leave me stranded. And this hike is something. If you're watching this and Greg's still on the hike, pray for his. Just every time we look at something, we've looked at it in the worst light. Man, this is going to be the worst thing ever, and it always comes through for us. God's revealed that whatever is in front of us, He's given us the strength to do it. Even though our secular minds are like, man, what in the world? Who would do an 18-mile day? Who would do a 15-mile day? And there's some big days ahead Greg, and I tell you, I'm praying morning, I'm praying noon, at night, is for Greg by name, his safety, his strength, his
Tummy.
his tummy, um, the fact that maybe he can find mountain money just along the trail in different places.
I have
Yeah.
stocked up on mountain money. I
But
am wealthy on the mountain money.
yeah, so I'm gonna try my best to figure out the best way to meet up again with Greg sometime in the middle of June, as he's probably 2/3, give or take 2/3 the way through his trip, or is that halfway?
I'm 1 week out at that point.
Really?
Yeah, I'm 1 week.
3/4.
Yeah,
So
three quarters.
about 3/4. So I'm gonna
hitting the easy part there.
yeah. So Greg, I'm gonna figure out the best way, and if anybody has any ideas, if I post this up and you watch it before he ends the trek, I'm bringing the man a steak dinner, and anybody who wants to help out, we're gonna do this. So just a great time.
And a cold orange.
And a cold orange. I'm gonna freeze a bag of oranges. I'm gonna have one too.
Well, let's close off this
yeah.
vlog with a prayer, man.
Absolutely, man.
Almighty God, we give you thanks for these days that we've had in the woods together in the wilderness, and Lord, particularly thank you for this night, Lord, where we're just with each other and with you and with nature. And Father, just bless Dale as he heads back home. Bless his family. And Father, I pray over the blogs that I've been sending out. And God, I don't know what you're going to do with them, how they're going to be shared, but God, I pray that somehow the blogs will touch someone's heart, Lord, and someone will respond. And Father, in the midst of all of this, we'll be able to bring hope and gospel of Jesus to people who are trapped in some of the really, really difficult situations in this world. And Lord, that we'll be able to provide hope and an option, Lord, before kids are vulnerable in Thailand to being captured by the sex industry and being ensnared and enslaved to that. Lord, bless every step along the way. Help Dell and me tomorrow as we part to know that we don't walk alone, but that we walk with you. And Lord, just reveal yourself to us in some way as we're taking those steps in opposite directions.
Yeah, and God, the strength that you've given us, it's just the tip, just the smallest bit that you have available for us. And I ask that you pour into Greg's strength, mental strength, physical strength, determination and will, and we've looked at what's coming up, and it looks daunting, but we know God, that you've got all the power, you've got control. You're going to shorten a mountain or two for Greg. You're gonna make it so it's a flat walk for him, and I'm convinced of that. And just give him the strength and power and the determination, and friends along the way too. There's so many other good people coming out to help Greg out, and we've learned something every single day, and we'll continue to. Some things we'll learn over and over, and we want the things that we learn not just to be the secular things. We want to be the spiritual things as well that we learn. And I just pray, your power, through Jesus Christ, to just lift Greg's every single step and set him down softly, and set him down with strength and power, that he can just rock through this thing in the mountains, through the Smokies and all the way to Damascus. And bless Beth and the family, because they're going without the spiritual man, the leader of the house, and they're doing a great job. There's all kinds of things going on at home, and they're doing a great job, and just keep pouring into them and his family, and watch over them as well, and in his absence, in his walk, out here on the Appalachian Trail with you, God. I just can't say enough, how great this experience has been, and how much more there is. I'm jealous for Greg. I'm jealous for I don't covet, but the things that are going to be seen out here are just absolutely supernatural, and I want to just pour out my support, and just let you know I'm praying every single morning, noon, and night for Greg by name. I'm going to text him, ask him what his prayer requests are. If it's his feet, his knees, his head, his mental, his partners that are marching, it doesn't matter. I'm praying. I'm doing everything I can, and sticking with you. And all these things we say in your Son Jesus' powerful name.
And we ask you to bless these subs that we're about to eat.
Subs.
Amen.
Amen.